I consider this idea of compromise and courage at work to be very important, partly because of the costs, which I'll go into for a moment, but I also consider if we challenge the myth that you have to go along and compromise in some of the ways that we're pressed to, then we might get on with the idea of work as joy. We might get on with what work could really create in the world, the value, the potential for work to be, for businesses and hybrid businesses to be part of transforming society. But at a minimum, it's an important issue because of the costs. When we get it wrong with compromising at work, and I'll define compromise a little more specifically in a moment, there are tremendous costs I see on 3 levels. One is the individual costs. When we feel like we have to compromise our principles and values at work, people describe to me in countless interviews, I've spoken with over 110 people on the book subject, in particular, out of the 400 we overall, people described it as deadening, as soul-destroying, when they had to do work that compromised who they were and what they cared about. It's deeply anxiety-producing to do this. One woman I spoke to said that she didn't recognize her own face in the mirror after 20 years working her way up to a vice president of a petrochemical company. Literally, her jaw was hard and her eyes were cold. She didn't recognize herself because of who she had become from work. People report losing motivation, creativity, self-respect. So there are individual costs if we can't live up to our values and principles at work. Then there are the business costs. And this is not always obvious because we say the reason people compromise is for greed, to make profit. But my work has been in studying recurring dysfunctions in organizations. And most of the time, it's bad for the organization, too. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the book Good to Great. This is one of the best-selling business books of all time. Well, the author did another book that didn't do so well because we don't like talking about negative stuff. And it was called How the Mighty Fall. And he studied 11 companies that had been great and fell into obscurity or died, while others in their industries thrived. And the difference was they didn't have the discipline to live up to their promises, keep their standards, or stay focused on what was really core for their business. They got too short-term focused. So it actually killed the business when they made the wrong compromises. And then lastly, and probably the most emotional, and there is some stuff tonight, we got to land this. This makes a difference in real lives. And people have been encouraging me to actually come out and be a little clearer about this. When we compromise at work, sometimes people die. I have Deepwater Horizon up here and the Tokyo Electric Power Company. On the Deepwater Horizon rig, the thing that's most stuck with me was that the installation manager, there's a quote now, have you heard this, of a phone call that he made on the morning of the fire? This has kind of been in some of the headlines, where he said, "Are you happy now? The rig's on fire. I told you this was going to happen." So this is an employee who was, and they don't know who he was speaking to. That's going to be the crux of the lawsuit. Was it his boss? Was it BP? He worked for Transocean. But employees speaking up about the real risks in situations can lead to, in this case, 11 people dying. Peanut Corporation of America, the salmonella in the peanut butter led to 9 people dying, the risk of kids dying. I mean, it's not just big industry. Lots of our work has impact on people's lives. So it matters if we actually live up to the principles and standards and the responsibilities that we have in our whatever our field.